Hi, everyone. Welcome to a little bit of woo woo. I'm your host, Jill Thomas. This show is about all things woo woo and most especially about how to be successful in the healing arts. I firmly believe this is the age of the entrepreneur, and I would so love to see all of you guys, particularly ones who have some kind of a woo woo type business or idea for a business, get started. Today's guest, I'm so excited. It's Devra Gregory, aka Dev. So we're going to use those words interchangeably. Dev is very unique. She's a professional dancer, a Wiccan priestess, never had one of those on the show before, and is a leader in the San Diego Pagan community. So welcome, Devra. I'm so excited to have you. I've never had a Wiccan.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Jill. I'm really happy to be here and share my stuff.
That's what I want you to start with. What is, I got this introduction, Wiccan priestess. Tell us what that is and how you become that, and tell us what we should know about that.
Well, first, let's go back a little bit, just like what is Wicca? And then we can talk about what is a Wiccan priestess. But I would say Wicca is probably the original woo-woo.
Love it.
It's really the oldest known, it wouldn't even call religion back in the day, 30,000 years ago. It was just the way that people related to each other and to their spiritual natures. So it's really about connecting to nature and the cycles, the seasons. We were very much dependent on nature, back in the day. And so all of our holidays are based on the seasons. So, planting and growing and then harvesting and then withdrawing. It's this expansion and contraction. And it's our nature to be in nature. And so, all the offshoots of what we consider woo-woo now, with crystals and meditation and connecting to other energies and whatever else you consider woo-woo, goes back, tens of thousands of years, really. There's nothing new about the New Age. It's just a revival of ancient wisdom and ancient traditions that were really squelched, during the time of the Dark Ages, the Middle Ages, when the church got really popular, and they were like, we're the only ones. So, every other tradition on the planet got subdued. So
I love.
Yeah.
Sorry,
go ahead.
I was just gonna say, so I love the idea though of being dependent on nature rather than Monsanto.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, we can't deny it. We see what's happening in the world with genetically modified and blah blah blah. With global warming and all that stuff, and really the way to save the planet is just to get back to the planet itself and to just let the planet do what the planet does. Just get out of the way, and the planet has regenerative properties and cyclic properties. And that's why we celebrate according to the seasons, because we recognize that everything is cyclic. So especially like in women's lives, we attune ourselves to the lunar cycle, to bleed and to be fertile on the moon cycle. So we've gotten away from that also, being in the concrete jungle. Women used to bleed together, and it was a beautiful, sacred thing. And, when male doctors started to take over and they didn't really understand women's bodies, it became a curse rather than a blessing. And so, a lot of women's work, goddess work, is about reclaiming our cycles and the power in women's bodies. And that to me is synonymous with honoring the earth, because we see the earth as feminine. And so there's a lot of people coming back to goddess worship, and and that's also about balancing the love of nature.
I love that idea too. And I often wonder, like, when women's cycles went from being a sacred thing to being something dirty and something we should be embarrassed about, and then having, presidential candidate make fun of somebody bleeding. I mean, it's just like crazy thought of how that has shifted quite a bit. Mm-hmm. Tell me more about, because I got schooled on paganism a little bit, because I people don't know this, but I wrote a tiny little chapter on a tiny little section on Wicca in my book, The High Income Healer.
Oh.
And my editor had just edited a book on Wicca, and she had to she had me, this little part that you wrote wasn't quite accurate. So I was like, well, that's just why I have an editor. This is great. But she was trying to explain to me that there's different facets to it and that there isn't one central core with Wicca or paganism. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, that's definitely true. Paganism is a umbrella term for all indigenous practices that came from Northern and Europe. So it would be very much the same as shamanic practices from South America and even Native American practices, where it's all earth-based rather than his story-based. There's no one central deity or history or a book that's written down. So because of that, it can vary quite a bit, and because there was nothing written down, or if it was destroyed, in the revival of Wicca, people are just kind of figuring out as we go along, and tuning into our hearts and our intuition and our, genetic memory to bring back the old practices. So a practice might vary completely differently between one Wiccan coven and another Wiccan coven, although very similar. Like, I had the opportunity to go to England, and I was in Glastonbury during the fall equinox. I was like, it's fall equinox, I'm going to find a ritual. And lo and behold, right downtown, they were having a public ritual. And I went and I was like, wow, this is almost just like what I've been doing, in the States for so long. So there are very much similar practices of, honoring the elements, casting a circle. We have a certain format just to hold space for the ritual. And that's in Wicca and, what would be considered like goddess worship. Now there's Druid practice, and that's completely different. They don't cast a circle. They don't call in the directions. They have a different set of deities that they honor, and just a different way to approach it, although they're still pagans. And so are the Norse pagans, also called Asatru. And those are the heathens. And that word also became like bad word.
I didn't know that.
But heathens is a reclaiming of the Norse traditions of paganism. And that's all, Odin. And like, we know it from the Marvel comics.
Right.
But, that's a sacred tradition to people. And I think it's a little bit sacrilegious, for them to see their deities, as superheroes. And it's kind of funny, like Wonder Woman and all these, really like sacred archetypes. But, at least it's getting into our consciousness so that we can start talking about it. And, it hurts me so much to see, some of the Hollywood and what's happened to witchcraft in Hollywood, because it's so not that.
Yeah, tell me about that, because I mean, I have to admit, there's a few shows that I love. I love the discovery of witches. I love stuff like that because it does make you think, you hear terms that you're familiar with. But tell us, because I will be the first to say, Hollywood gets hypnotherapy wrong as a hypnotherapist. You guys, if you see anything on hypnotherapy, it's not true. Okay, it's really not that interesting. But tell us about how Hollywood gets Wicca wrong.
In every way. I mean, there may be some, and I don't know because I don't watch that much television. But as far as the movies go, we don't cast spells on people. We don't like.
You think?
We don't. It's like our one law, our one rule is harm none. Do as you will. So we believe in karma, or the law of three. And what you put out comes back to you, because we understand how energy works. So we wouldn't dream of casting a negative spell on somebody else, because it's just going to come back. And so,
with interest, by the way, coming back with interest.
With interest, yeah. 3 times 3.
You're right.
3 times 3. So that's not.
Not getting that in the stock market.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's fun to watch. I love Harry Potter.
Me too.
I'm a big addict. But, we don't wave a magic wand and make things move around. I mean, more power to you if you have the power to do that, and there are probably some, higher level witches who can do that. Just like when I was a meditator back in the 80s, I was into TM, and, there was levitation. I was like, I've never seen it happen, but I've heard that people could levitate themselves from meditating so much. meditate,
Mhm. Yeah.
a lot. So those anomalies can happen because when you break through, into the quantum realm and you understand that we're actually not physical beings, that we're energetic, basically you can do anything. But at the same time, we're very much attached to the physical world. So, we're bound by physical laws in a certain way. But now that we're studying quantum physics, and I call it quantum magic, because it's so much the same when you change the way you're thinking. The law of attraction and all that is really just a reframing of what magic is.
I love
Just
it. I love it.
another way to say it. And the secret, it's not a secret. It's
Oh,
been
I
a
know.
secret, it's
Right.
been a cult. So a cult just means hidden, because that the power to change things at will is in everybody. And of course, the powers that be, they don't want people changing things. They want you to stay small and in the little box that they put you in so that they can control you and tax you and, do all that stuff. But so I got on a tangent.
No, I love it. And I love the idea of it being magic. I remember there was one experience I had when I went to a very conventional church once, and I was watching, the ritual. The priest had us say a prayer, and for the things that we wanted, we were asking God for what we wanted, and we putting money in the coffer, and which to me felt like an offering. And how is that not, and there was incense and candles, and we all had to dress up. And I was thinking about how I had been to Wiccan events where there was a casting circle and a whole ritual, and I thought, this isn't, in a lot of ways, not that different. I mean, the Christians are going to write me a nasty note, and please don't in the comments. That's not very nice, but whatever. But it does help my algorithm, so maybe I should encourage that. I don't know. But I remember thinking, this is just not so different in some ways.
Well, a lot of Christian religions and practices are very pagan. The Christmas tree, when Christmas is.
Yeah, really.
It's right at the winter solstice.
Yeah.
The return of the sun, because the days start getting longer. So, they just kind of like overlaid their holidays. The goddess of springtime, her name is Ostara or Aostar, which became Easter. And the Easter bunny and Easter eggs are all pagan, from pagan tradition. It's about fertility. So, the next time you do an Easter egg hunt with your kids, something to think about. But it's, we share and we interconnect, and prayer is prayer.
Right.
We might call it a magical spell, and a Christian will call it, a prayer to God or something like that. And there really isn't that much difference in it. It's using our minds and our hearts and our desires to create something more desirable. And I think maybe the only slight difference is that in the Christian faith, you're giving it into the hands of God completely. Like, if this is your will, God, where pagans take it a little bit more like, this is my will, but because I feel I also am deity. And you see, this is where it starts to really divide.
Yep.
Like, the deity lives within me, so that, the living, breathing, manifestation of deity is within each one of us. And that could be seen as blasphemous. But it's also, your will is my will because I am deity. I might have a tiny, tiny piece of the goddess in me, because she is magnificent and she is everything. And so we also believe in the God. So the God and the goddess as the union of the whole. But because the goddess is the one who gives life to the universe, life to the planet, like Mother Earth, women give birth to people, and for the most part, it's the female in most species that give life. So we honor the goddess as our primary deity. And so this is what drew me to paganism. I grew up Jewish, and there's a lot of esoteric information in Judaism that I didn't know about because I was conservative, religious, and, it was all about the father. And I wanted to have the boys' ceremony at my bas mitzvah. I wanted a bar mitzvah. They wouldn't let me. I said, this isn't fair. I want an equal opportunity religion. So I left. And, now that I look back at Judaism, I'm like, that's a pretty cool religion, because it's, there's tradition in it. There's a lot of singing and dancing and elevating your spirit, and it's beautiful, And so, so now I'm kind of integrated. I call myself a Jew witch. And,
I love
there's witches who consider themselves Buddhists, so we can kind of bring in the faith. There's even witches who honor Jesus, as an avatar, as one of the holy people who have been on the planet, but not the only one. You see, this is again where we differ, because we're polytheistic. We see many different forms of deity come, onto the planet, or disincarnate, and
Yeah, I love what you're saying, because what I'm hearing is that it's not one of those mutually exclusive religions. I used to work at a Jewish hospital, so I know I've always had an admiration for that religion, even though I'm not signing up for it. But I always thought, this is so beautiful. They have these rituals every month, and it wasn't the Christian background I grew up in didn't have that in the same way. And so that's one of the things I think I've admired about Wicca as well, is that there's these rituals, and they're every month or almost every month. And there's it's sort of an earthly look to this. I love that you answered the question I was about to ask about how you got into it. Tell me a bit about, how does somebody get into this work? I mean, there's I'm going to assume that it's not in the Yellow Pages. Oh, kitty.
There's my kitty. All witches have cats.
I have 3 cats, so yep.
So I, my bas mitzvah was in the early 70s. And, I mentioned I left Wicca, or I left Judaism, and I went on just kind of a spiritual search. And it lasted me into the 80s, when New Age started to happen in metaphysics. So, I studied Shakti Gawain and Ram Dass and Shirley MacLaine, because I come from a dance background. So I read all of her books, out on a limb, all of her books. And so my mind started to open. So the book Be Here Now was the first time I ever saw that there were goddesses, because in Hinduism, there's goddesses. And Ram Dass, who used to be Richard Alpert, also a Jewish psychologist, who then transitioned into, being a Buddhist and Hindu teacher, wrote this incredible book about opening your mind, and it was turned sideways, and it was very artistic, and it was like, wow, this is a crazy book. And so goddesses, maybe that's what was missing in Judaism. So then I got invited to a coven. It was just a random, like a friend of a friend. I was living in Florida, and I got invited to go, and it just clicked. I was like, oh, this is who I am. And so my boyfriend at the time was like, yeah, it's cool, but it's not me. And I was like, it's me. So they said, okay, you can join us, but I had to commit. And so I did. And it was like every full moon, every new moon, every Sabbath, which are the 8 seasonal holidays. And so I was there a lot, there were just 6 of us. But I committed, and I learned from this small group. And then I had found some other teachers in Florida who I studied with. Diane Stein was one of them. And then I just started, practicing on my own, because I left Florida, and I was just doing my own thing and doing a lot of reading. And then when I got back to San Diego in 2000, I found they just called it a goddess circle. Not even a Wiccan circle. It was very generic, although it was Wicca, but they didn't call themselves Wiccan. So I started a circle with those people. And, next thing I knew, I was leading my own circle. And I'm sorry, I hope you can't hear that. I forgot to turn my phone off.
It's all part of the fun. It's all part of it's magic. It's a different kind of magic.
Yeah. Technology is way magic.
Oh my God, I know, right? I don't understand how a plane flies. How's that not magic, right? I can read a book on it, though. So I guess that means it's not magic, because somebody wrote about how. Now, you do this as a career. Tell us about the career part of it, because I'm seeing a lot of clients who are awakening into new ideas, and they want to get out of their corporate jobs and go into something new. Tell me about how you kind of turn this into a career.
So I hold public rituals and events. And so I'm very open about my practice. And, I've been developing a pagan community for the last like at least 10 to 12 years, just holding small circles for the public. I mean, I hold rituals, but then there's something else that I was holding called fire circles. And these were not exclusively for Wiccans. It's very pagan feeling because we're dancing around a fire, you know,
Sounds like fun.
and it's into your primal nature. They're all different practice, you know, all different paths. We're welcome to come. But it, you know, it drew a very eclectic audience, you know, from around the county. And so it was very much alchemical. So alchemy is another, like, I guess you could call it paganism, but it's not a religious practice. It's more of just a spiritual practice. And that's a whole nother wormhole to go down, is alchemy. So I started to hold those events, and I started small. Like I started with 8 people, 10 people, and, you know, once a month, just drumming and dancing inside. I didn't even have a fire yet. I was just like inside, little candle altar. Then I started to hold full moon rituals, and then everything just, you know, it was like pulling myself up by the bootstraps, really. Just one thing grew to the next, and, you know, holding community events just because I feel very passionate about bringing people together for spiritual worship, and but also just to bring, you know, the fringe kind of people who don't feel like they fit in mainstream. Like, you have a home, like you have a community. You can come and find a place, whether you're, you know, gay or straight or transgender or non-defined. You know, everybody's welcome. We don't have judgment about people. And so then I was holding weekend retreats. I do 4 events a year now. And I do like an inside party for Halloween, which Halloween is one of our sacred holidays. It's called Samhain. And, you know, it's very similar to Day of the Dead. So I do a big event for that. It's like a party, you know, so it's a ticketed event. And we have ritual, and then we, you know, have a band and dance. So I've made it a career, but it's still like coming from a place of deep passion for bringing the community together. And it's not all I do. I still work in entertainment, and I, you know, have a little side massage practice. So I do see clients on a occasion, you know, on Zoom, or if people need some spiritual counseling, but you know, that's just by request right now.
I love that. I love that as an entrepreneur who has like so many different ideas and so many different things I want to do. I love to see people having a job and a business and a job and 2 businesses, or 2 jobs and 3 businesses, maybe not as many jobs. But I love the idea of not saying, okay, I'm only going to do this. I'm going to focus on it, because that's the so old paradigm that we're just going to do just the job or just the business, and allowing for all of those passions, because you've created a business where you're doing different things. Like, I looked on your website, which is beautiful, by the way. You guys should all go to our website. There's got a lot of sacred geometry on our website. I will put a link in the description so you can easily find it. But I can see that you do a lot of things, and I can see you do a lot of things with the community. And it's really an outreach that does help people understand this sort of faith a little bit. Back to the religion itself, if you can humor me for one question that I'm kind of curious about, like, I hear a lot about the devil and the demons. And is there a devil in your religion?
Nope.
I thought there wasn't.
We don't know who that is. Christians made that character up. Well, so I believe that. So if the Christians saw the pagans dancing around a fire and dressing up like their deities, which they would do, you know, and one of our deities is named Pan, and he wears little horns,
and he's a dude.
He's a dude, and he's very sexual.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, his time of the year is like springtime, you know, and there's fertility, and he's like half goat, and he has a tail, right? And he wants to have sex with everything. And to the Christians, that was very not okay. So, you know, they made this character up in order to vilify the pagans who wouldn't convert to Christianity, you know, and under the threat of torture, like, you worship the devil. And, you know, I mean, people would confess just to avoid getting burned or getting tortured. And, you know, we don't believe in the devil. We just don't have that character. Now, there is a deity called Baphomet, who also, he's the god of the underworld. So we, there's it's kind of like a shamanic underworld, like the death phase. Like we don't see death as this horrible thing. I mean, it's like in Hinduism or the Egyptian, it's like it's part of life. We're all going to die, and it's not like we're going to go to hell. We don't believe in hell.
I think that's interesting because like that whole idea of, witches having congress with the devil to get their special magical powers. And then the whole time there really was no devil within the Wicca religion, I think is sort of interesting.
Yeah.
And sad.
It is. And, I would love to just enlighten people just a wee bit, just, we call it demystify the mystical. Everybody has the ability to sin, if you will, or to, be bad people. It's not exclusive to witches or to anybody. Like there's good witches and bad witches just because there's good people and bad people. And we can be seduced by, by all the what would Christians be called sin, but we just, we feel like, okay, it can be that, but we're not like doomed forever to burning somewhere forever and ever. Like we all have the ability to reform ourselves, and to condemn a soul for everlasting, like for it doesn't match, because we believe in like purification of the spirit and the soul. So everybody has an opportunity to get better.
Interesting. I do always find it interesting to me with religion is how much religion is number one. And I love religion. Don't get me wrong. I'm very spiritual, very religious in my own ways. But one of the things that always kind of bothered me about religion is that its number one aim is to control reproduction, right? You have to be married, control who can reproduce, how they can reproduce, and under what circumstances. You have to get married in the church, and you can only even practice reproduction activities after you've signed the paperwork and paid your whatever fee. Mm-hmm. So I do find it really interesting how you've got this religious belief that is much more human nature like. Pan goes and wants to play with their party with everyone, right? Especially in the spring when reproduction needs to happen if we want to keep going. Tell me a little bit. I'm curious about the role of women. I know the role of women. It is a women's based religion. But what happens when women get older? Because in the more traditional, women get older. We're past reproductive age. They sort of get, okay, you're not that important anymore. Tell me about that in your religion.
Very different. So we have what are traditionally known as the three phases of womanhood: maiden, mother, and crone. And they're all honored. It's the triple goddess, right? It's seen as, all parts of the whole, again, maiden, pre-menstrual, motherhood, menstrual time, and the crone is post-menopausal. And she's the wise woman. Just like in Native American traditions, where there might be a council of grandmothers and they're the decision makers. Very similar in matriarchal ancient cultures. So all ancient cultures, I'd say, around the world, or most, were matriarchal. And the decision makers were the women, and the older women, because, they weren't distracted by their periods or their emotional, ups and downs, or by taking care of, their kids. They had lived, they knew everything about herbs. And, that this is another big part of Wicca is the, what would be witchcraft is the craft of the wise. And the wisdom is in how to heal with plants. So witch doctor, same thing. And, by the time a woman is in her crondom years, she's wise and she knows everything, and she can be the ultimate healer and nurturer, so it's very different. So now we've kind of inserted a fourth phase because women are living a lot longer these years. So we have a queen phase between mother and queen. Yes.
Love it.
And it's a time, after, we don't menstruate anymore, but we're not quite, old and ragged and wrinkled yet. So I had my queening ritual when I was 60. I'm now 65, and I still don't feel like a crone. Maybe at 70, I'll have my croning ritual. And we mark these times with, personal rituals or group rituals to to honor that phase. Like, when a young girl is starting to bleed, instead of, shoving her in the bathroom with her supplies and like, here's your stuff,
And read the directions, because we're not going to tell you how these things work.
Yeah, we give them an honoring, a ritual, and then they get to go to what's called the red tent, which is, a place where women can come together and talk about their cycles and share, share their pains or their joys and the richness of what it means to be a woman. So that's how it's so different, than modern times where, we're doing everything we can to deny our periods. And, we call it our moon time, and it's just a beautiful honoring. So, each phase of motherhood.
I love the idea of having a ritual sort of marking each of these events. Because when I was a kid, there's the Hispanics have this beautiful 16 type event. I can't remember the name of it.
Quinceañera.
Yeah. Forgive me for anyone listening to this who knows that was said wrong. Apologies. Obviously did not grow up with that tradition, but I thought it was beautiful. And then the Jews have this wonderful bat mitzvah and bar mitzvah events.
Yeah.
And the sweet 16 thing, but there's nothing to honor like the later phases, the wisdom phases. It's like we're only honoring the times when girls are the most fertile.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's the way the culture has developed. We take our old people and shove them away in in old age homes. Right now, I take care of my 91-year-old mom. She lives with me, and every time I tell people that, they're like, "That's so beautiful. Thank you for doing that. It's so wonderful." And luckily, she doesn't need around-the-clock care. So, getting back, we didn't used to live in these nuclear families. We used to live in tribal, in more village kind of situations where, the whole village would raise the children. The old people might raise the children if the men were out hunting and the women were out gathering, or vice versa. I'm sure there were some women who hunted also, unless they were with child or breastfeeding or something. And, everybody took care of everybody. It wasn't just, this nuclear kind of family. And I think that all came about with, the church and trying to control families. And, you only have one partner and that's all you get.
Let's both do that.
Yeah.
Everybody watching, drink your water. It's time to drink some water. Love it. So we're kind of coming up on the end of time here, and I definitely want to give you a chance to say what you'd like to say, because I know that there's some, I want to make sure there's things I didn't think to ask you. But I want to go back to one little thing before we go to, this will give you a chance to think about what you want to say. How do people find this religion? I know that there's books on it, but how do, like I said, I know it's not in the yellow pages. How do you find people like you?
It's very grassroots. Okay. So I'm pretty open. So if people are looking, they can find me. I'm on Meetup. I have the San Diego Pagans and Witches on Meetup. I'm on Facebook. My tribe is called Sacred Flame. So we don't call ourselves Wiccan on Facebook because we're open and we're eclectic. And we're as much alchemists as we are pagans.
Love it.
So, it's just like when the student is ready, the teacher appears.
Good way of putting it.
So if you're ready and you're looking, and because of the way energy works, if you're just calling that in, then it's going to find you.
Love
you
it.
don't really have to go seeking that much. You just have to put the intention out and, have it come from your heart and really with pure intention, and the circle will find you. Or, you'll just happen to open up something and it'll be like, oh, there it is right there. Like this happened. I held full moon ritual last night and somebody just came out of the blue. She's like, yesterday, I just went on Google and I wrote in full moon ceremony, and, there it came up and she showed up last night.
And then, of course, light a candle too, because I always do that. There's my candle. I always light a candle. Mm-hmm. So, Dev, is there anything that you think people should know that I forgot to ask? You get the last word. So what would you like to say? No pressure.
If the listeners feel like different than other people and they don't fit into the mainstream, just know that there is a huge other stream that you can find your path with, that we may not be right out there in the open, but we're definitely there. In fact, I heard that Wicca is the fastest growing religion in the country right now. So honor yourself and don't let the fear about what you've been taught control your decisions. Because, I understand that, our parents have indoctrinated a lot of belief into us and fear into us. But if fear controls us, then we're not living the truth of who we really are inside. So just shed the fear and find what's true in your heart, and then go out there and find the community. Whatever city you live in, we're there.
I love it. I always think what you just said reminds me of something my mentor, Michelle Mache, is always saying is go where you are celebrated, not just tolerated. And I really kind of think about that when I go to, even when I've been to business networking events and I'm like, I don't like these people. This is not my tribe. I got to go where I'm celebrated because I'm kind of pushy and I have a different approach, and rather than just tolerated because, well, she's the weird one who does psychic readings and hypnotherapy.
Right.
So I love that, Deb. I love that idea. So how can people find, go ahead.
And if people are in San Diego, I mean, I'm very easy to reach. I have full moon rituals. I do those 4 public events. I also have a new market called the Pagan Pop-Up Market to support local businesses who sell, witchy stuff or crystals or do tarot readings. And that's the second Sunday of every month. I'm also one of my thousands of businesses. I have a small clothing business that I do resell clothing because I believe in sustainability and reusing what's already on the planet. Because I'm very much a hippie at heart, and, into recycling and honoring the earth and eating well and eating organic food. So that's another part of me. That's not really Wiccan or pagan, but that's just me and who I am. And I really love to encourage people to find that natural way of living in all ways, not just in our spirituality, but, in what we take in our bodies, what we wear, what we use on our skin and our household products. So all of that. I hope that your listeners and possibly watchers got a lot out of this, and, open your eyes to what paganism is. And so it was a pleasure to be with you.
And honestly, and what it's not.
What it's not.
Yeah. It's not devil worshiping, which I thought was kind of interesting when I was researching this. Like, there's no devil? Wait, what? This whole time I was hearing about this devil thing? There is no devil? Where did that come from?
Right?
Love it. So how can people find you? I'm going to put the link in the description, but sometimes people like to just tell us what your website is. Let's go with that.
Yeah, it's my name, Devra, which is Devra, Gregory, GREGORY.com. Really
Love
easy.
It.
And, all my events go up there, and, link to contact me if you want to get on my email list. It's easy. The box flies in as soon as you come to my website.
Magic.
So, yeah, like magic, technology magic. So I hope, I hope to see some of your readers and listeners in person, in the flesh sometime.
Love it. So thank you so much, Devra. I'm so happy to have you. I'm so excited. I love that you gave all this great information. I mean, I didn't ever know that much about it, and this was beautiful experience. So final thing I want to say is this is the age of the entrepreneur. I want you guys to go out and make some success happen. I want you to do things that are fun for you, that feed your soul. I want you to go where you were celebrated, not just tolerated. And I want you to do your best to find things to bring alternative streams of revenue into your household, so you're not reliant on one person, so that you're not under someone else's control. And I hope that you do this. I hope you take this to heart. And at the very least, if there's one lesson I've learned in business that I want to share with everyone, go right now, buy your name. Go to whoever you buy your domains from, and at least buy your name. So no matter what kind of business you're going to run, you've got your own name as the domain. I'm just telling you, because I can't get mine. You guys all need to get yours. So anyway, thanks so much, Devra. Thank you so much, guys. Thanks. And I hope to see you again soon. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.